Hey guys, tonight we journey to a place that was anything but peaceful. Mount Olympus, home to the most dysfunctional divine family in mythology. Imagine a realm where thunder roars, tempers flare, and someone's always turning into a swan for questionable reasons. But in the middle of all that glorious chaos, there's a fire. A small, steady flame that never flickers, no matter how many gods are screaming at each other. And there's Hestia, sitting beside it, unbothered. The goddess of the hearth, the original leave me out of it queen. You're probably not going to survive a week up here, not with Hera throwing dishes, Ares marching around shirtless and angry, and Hermes playing pranks with stolen sandals. But Hestia, she survives just fine, by quietly being the one everyone forgets to yell at. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up a staircase of clouds. Your sandals are already soggy from divine dew, and the closer you get to the top, the louder the bickering becomes. It's like walking into a mythological group chat with no mute button. Hera is accusing Zeus of looking at nymphs again. Poseidon's trident is stuck in a decorative pillar. Apollo is arguing with Artemis over the playlist for tonight's solar eclipse. And somewhere in the middle of it all is Hestia, stirring a pot of something that smells like rosemary and simmered peace. She doesn't have a throne like the others. Instead, she sits on a cushion by the central hearth. No lightning bolts, no battle gear, just a warm shawl and a ladle. You think the others might ignore her, but every time the arguing hits a crescendo, someone wanders over for a ladle of stew or a moment of quiet beside the fire. There's something timeless about her. While the rest of the Olympians chase glory, lovers and Instagram-worthy revenge plots, Hestia's just here, being the goddess of home and hearth. And that, oddly enough, makes her one of the most respected. Not because she demands it, because she doesn't. She never leaves Olympus. Not really. Her flame is always present at the center of things. You walk around the marble halls and realize every offering, every ceremony, every awkward family dinner starts and ends with her. Even the wine Dionysus spills gets poured in her name first, though mostly by accident. There's an old fringe theory that Hestia's hearth is what keeps the other gods from literally burning Olympus to the ground. Historians still argue whether the hearth was a symbolic anchor for divine order, or just the best place to eavesdrop without getting caught. One thing's certain, while everyone else is busy being dramatic, Hestia is essential. She's the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, and technically the eldest Olympian. She was also the first to get swallowed by Cronus, and the last to be barfed back up, which probably explains her deep appreciation for quiet time. It's hard not to admire her strategy. She's like that one introvert at a chaotic house party who manages to stay perfectly composed with just a cup of tea and the right corner seat. No shouting matches, no magical curses, just quiet influence and perfect roast vegetables. You sit beside her. She ladles you some of that rosemary stew and hands you a piece of fresh bread. The fire pops once, like it's saying hello. Around you, the noise fades into a sort of divine white noise. Tempers cooling just a bit, weapons being set down, egos deflating slightly. And then you notice something curious. Every god and goddess, no matter how dramatic, eventually drifts toward the hearth. They drop by, they murmur a greeting, they share a glance. Some stay for a sip of something warm, some just hover awkwardly and leave. But all of them come here. Hestia doesn't flinch, doesn't move. She's already where she needs to be. Later, when Dionysus tries to turn the moon into a wine barrel, long story, it's Hestia who calms him down with warm honey and a firm no. Not angry, not loud, just final. And when Hermes loses his sandals again, it's Hestia who quietly hands him a spare pair, already polished, already warm. It's no wonder the ancients lit their homes from her flame. Every temple, every home, every inn on the road. If there was fire, there was Hestia. Not because she demanded worship, but because she made people feel safe enough to fall asleep beside it, just like you're doing now. So you wake to the gentle crackle of the hearth and find yourself still seated beside Hestia, who hasn't moved an inch. The scent of warm olive oil and baked figs hangs in the air. Outside, the rest of Olympus is still in full mythological mayhem. Ares is staging a wrestling match between two giants. Hera is dramatically sighing into a mirror, and Hermes is now trying to sell ambrosia as a skin cream. And yet, in the center of it all, Hestia's flame flickers peacefully. Zeus appears, not with thunder and chest thumping, but cautiously, like a child approaching the one adult who actually has boundaries. He clears his throat and makes a small offering at the hearth. Then, surprisingly, he sits. You watch in awe as the king of the gods politely asks Hestia if she would accept a throne. Now, this is not something Zeus does often. Thrones on Olympus are highly prized. They're symbols of power, authority, and dramatic posture. Accepting one means you're ready to be embroiled in every divine argument, judgment, and petty competition. It's like being handed the role of chairperson in an eternally dysfunctional board meeting. And Hestia? She smiles, softly, and says no. It's not a dramatic refusal. No shouting, no epic proclamation. Just a quiet, thank you, but no. She prefers the hearth to the throne. The other gods blink. You blink. Even the hearth seems to glow a little brighter at the simplicity of her response. This changes things. By stepping aside, Hestia allows Dionysus to take the 12th throne. The gods were limited to 12 seated members and someone had to make space. Hestia volunteers. Again, not because she's forced to, because she chooses to. Some scholars still argue whether this was a narrative afterthought to explain Dionysus's sudden inclusion among the Olympian. Others believe it's an intentional commentary on selflessness, on the power of choosing presence over position. You sip some warm herbal tea, Hestia's blend, of course, and realize that this is her superpower. In a pantheon obsessed with hierarchy, she has no ego, and that makes her impossible to provoke. No dramatic love affairs, no bloody rivalries, no mythical vendettas written in constellations, just steady warmth. Even her refusal of the throne changes Olympus. Suddenly the notion of power softens. It's not just about thunderbolts and wars, but also about who gets the first bite of bread, who watches the fire while others chase glory. You stroll through Olympus later that day. Ares is polishing his armor in the sun. Aphrodite is humming a love spell to her reflection. But the true center of the realm is still that fire, that circle of warmth where Hestia remains. She didn't need the throne. She already had the room. It's a strange lesson, especially here among immortals. The one who steps back sometimes holds the most gravity. You wonder how many other myths were redirected by her quiet choice. In one corner of Olympus, a minor goddess tries to cause a scandal. Something about a golden apple and a wedding invitation. But it fizzles out. No one's in the mood. The hearth has settled them all, at least for now. The stew simmers again. This time it smells like thyme and something nutty. Maybe barley. Hestia hums a tune older than the Iliad. You don't know the words, but it makes your shoulders relax and your eyelids droop. Elsewhere, gods rise and fall. Heroes are born, cursed, and remembered. Empires tremble. But here, none of that matters. Here, in the heart of Olympus, is the goddess who simply stays. Not because she must, because she chooses to. And oddly, everyone seems to orbit her without even realizing. It's no coincidence that in real Greek homes, the hearth was the first place honored when a new home was built. Flames were carried from the city's central fire, Hestia's fire, to light a new one. The symbolism was clear. This isn't just about warmth or food. It's about beginning with peace. You hear someone reciting poetry nearby. It's clumsy, probably one of the muses trying out new verses, but even they pause by the hearth. Just for a moment. A laugh rises from Apollo, somewhere down the marble corridor. It echoes lightly but doesn't disturb you. You're still by the fire, safe, warm, out of the line of divine firestorms. And that's how Hestia lives, at the edge of every myth, yet somehow at its core. She never leads a war, she never curses a mortal, she never seduces or storms or transforms into a golden shower. She simply remains constant, like the fire that never goes out. That's not to say she's weak, on the contrary. You can feel her strength in the way others settle in her presence. She is gravity, disguised as hospitality. As the flames crackle low and the stars begin to glimmer through Olympus's domed ceiling, you feel something shift in the air, a calmness, like someone just turned down the volume on the universe. You look over at Hestia. She smiles again, offering you another bowl of stew, this time with extra barley. It's not magical, not glowing, not delivered by nymphs riding dolphins, but it's perfect, just like her quiet, unwavering presence. You stretch out your legs a little, letting the warmth of the fire seep into your toes. The drama on Mount Olympus has lulled, at least for the moment, and Hestia hasn't moved. She's still there, right where she always is, gently stirring the embers, not because anyone told her to, but because that's where she belongs. You begin to notice something odd the longer you stay. While the other gods flit in and out, making entrances with fanfare and flair, Hestia is never really gone. You start to wonder, how does someone so quiet become one of the most worshipped deities in ancient Greece? You wander down from Olympus and into the human world, slipping quietly into a sun-drenched agora in a small Greek polis. The people here bustle and chatter, carrying wine jars, loaves of bread, and small offerings wrapped in linen. At the center of the town is a fire, carefully tended, just like the one on Olympus. This is Hestia's domain. It doesn't look like much, a stone hearth, a few worn stools, maybe a pot simmering with lentils. But this is the first place new settlers visit when founding a city. The hearth is kindled from Hestia's eternal flame, carried by torch from the mother city, and it becomes the literal heart of the colony. It's a tradition so widespread and consistent that historians still argue whether it was just symbolic, or if Greeks genuinely believed the flame was Hestia herself, present in every flicker. You trail a group of young Athenian men, preparing to leave for a new colony. Before they go, they kneel at Hestia's hearth. The priestess lights a new flame and hands it to them in a bronze lantern. It's oddly moving, the way they hold it with both hands, like it's more valuable than all the armor and gold they're taking with them. Back in town, daily life hums around her fire. Sacrifices begin with her. Feasts open with a libation to her. Even before Zeus gets his thunder-roasted goat, Hestia receives the first and last offerings. It's easy to overlook her if you're only skimming the myths. She doesn't kidnap anyone. She doesn't ride chariots through the sky. But if you're building a home, throwing a festival, or just trying not to freeze during a Thessalian winter, Hestia's your girl. You slip into a home, stone walls, olive trees outside, the smell of garlic and goat's cheese, and find the family hearth glowing quietly. The grandmother kneels to stoke it, murmuring a brief prayer. A child tosses in a bit of honey cake. No loud ritual, no divine theatrics, just a sense of rhythm, of being connected to something steady. And this happens everywhere, every town, every home. No divine RSVP needed. There's something democratic about it. Unlike the temples of Zeus with their towering statues, or the seductive incense of Aphrodite's altars, Hestia, quirkily, she didn't even have many large temples of her own. Historians are still puzzled by this. Was it because the hearth itself was her temple, or because she was so ever-present that separate worship wasn't necessary? You walk into a city's Prytaneum, the public building where civic fire burned, and find her again. That flame is never allowed to go out. If it does, the city performs purification rituals and relights it, often from another sacred flame, to ensure Hestia's presence returns. That's not something they do for Ares when his statue gets dusty. Later you wander into a festival. There's music and dancing, wine flowing like rivers. But even here, at the wildest parts of celebration, someone raises a cup to Hestia. She's the bookend, first and last, the opening blessing and the closing grace. You begin to realize, Hestia doesn't need a cult. She is culture. There's even an odd fringe story, likely from a poet with too much wine, that Hestia once took the form of a single spark and travelled across Greece unnoticed, blessing every home that welcomed her with bread or olive oil. It's not canon, but as you walk through warm kitchens and firelit halls, it feels strangely true. Even the animals seem to respect her flame. A dog curls beside a hearth in a fishing village. A cat naps under a baker's oven. They're calm, like they know they're safe here. And you do too. Later, back on Olympus, you return to her fire. It's exactly as you left it. Of course it is. The gods are arguing again, this time about who gets to turn into a dolphin. But the drama doesn't reach here. You sit beside Hestia, and for a moment, the noise fades. She offers you a fig. You take it, and you begin to understand. She didn't seek power or adoration. She didn't need to. People came to her, not in fear, not for favour, but because in a world of stormy gods and unpredictable fates, she was the warmest constant, the hearth still glowing, always glowing. The next morning, the hearth greets you like an old friend, soft amber glow, gentle hiss, the faint smell of toasted barley from last night's stew. Outside this warm bubble, Olympus is already revving up for yet another episode of its endless reality show. You hear Ares clanking past in full armour, muttering about honour, while flexing so hard his cuirass squeaks. Down the corridor, Aphrodite's laughter rings like distant wind chimes, sweet, musical, and just a little bit ominous if you know her track record. You step out to stretch your legs, and immediately you're pulled into the gravitational field of divine melodrama. Ares is busy challenging anyone in range to a sparring match, wearing more swagger than strategy. Aphrodite, meanwhile, is testing a new shade of rose gold lip balm on a bewildered satyr. You try to tiptoe past, but no such luck. Gods have excellent peripheral vision. Ares spots you first. "Come, mortal," he booms, brandishing a spear the size of a flagpole. "Join me in glorious combat." You politely remind him you're allergic to impalement and sidestep behind a marble column. Aphrodite waves a manicured hand, purring something about needing a new muse for an epic romance. Her eyes glimmer with matchmaking schemes that could end your night in therapy, or worse, in a swan costume. You retreat, strategically, of course, to where Hestia sits unfazed. No war paint, no perfume cloud, just the soft rustle of her shawl as she offers you a seat by the fire. One sip of her cinnamon-spiced honey water, and the racket outside fades like a badly tuned lyre. You've noticed a pattern. Whenever tensions flare, Hestia becomes the epicenter of non-drama. She doesn't preach peace, she simply radiates it, like a Wi-Fi signal of calm. Ares stomps in, chest heaving, looking for anyone to spar. Yet the moment he crosses the hearth's glow, his shoulders drop a fraction. He grumbles, accepts a bowl of lentil soup, and sinks onto a stool that wasn't there a moment ago. It's the Olympian equivalent of a toddler's nap time. Then comes Aphrodite, trailing rose petals and unfinished love stories. She glides up, spins a strand of hair, and gives Hestia her brightest, most disarming smile. The one that usually convinces kings to start wars. Hestia simply ladles a spoonful of soup, places it in Aphrodite's hands, and says nothing. The goddess of love pouts for exactly 3 seconds, then sighs, sips, and settles beside the fire as if it was her own boudoir. One mainstream historical fact slips into view while you watch this hush hour unfold. In real Greek households, new brides formally welcomed themselves to their husband's family by circling the hearth and tossing dried dates into the flames. It was a quiet promise of harmony, no flaming chariots required. A quirky tidbit? Some sleepy Athenian playwright once penned a lost comedy where Hestia hosted a no-drama dinner party, forcing every loud deity to communicate only in whispers or leave hungry. The script survives only in a scrap referencing Ares the shushhead, but scholars love the idea so much they quote it at conferences just to watch colleagues giggle. Meanwhile, historians still argue whether Ares ever had a truly peaceful cult in Athens, or if every shrine to him doubled as a last-minute anger management clinic. Either way, whenever mortals prayed for less bloodshed, they usually tossed a nod to Hestia first, just in case. Back on Olympus, you realize Hestia's skill isn't just calmness, it's redirection. When conversation spirals toward combat or courtship, she slips in a bowl, a blanket, a fire-poking stick, anything that grounds divine egos back in simple sensation. War and romance both need fuel. She offers comfort instead. Ares, now licking soup from his war-stained gauntlet, tries one last time to start something. "Shouldn't we at least arm wrestle?" he grumbles. Hestia passes him a crust of bread thick with olive tapenade. He stares at it, then at her, then sighs like a deflated trumpet. "Later," he mumbles, chewing thoughtfully. Aphrodite brightens, planting gossip seeds. "Didn't you hear? Hermes found Apollo's secret poetry stash." Her tone drips with the promise of new scandal. Hestia merely raises an eyebrow and offers Aphrodite a mint leaf. The goddess of love bites down, flavor bursts, and just like that, she forgets the gossip long enough to hum a lullaby. It's the mythical version of "let's not and say we did." You begin to see why ancient Greeks lit household fires with such ceremony. Beyond warmth and cooking, the hearth was an emotional thermostat. No wonder Hestia received the first sip of wine and the final crumb of every feast. She was the guarantee that whatever chaos happened in between, you'd always end safe and nourished. Ares finishes his bread, stands, and miracle of miracles, thanks Hestia before trudging out to sharpen spears elsewhere. Aphrodite lingers a bit longer, twirling the mint stem like a wand. She leans toward you conspiratorially. "Honestly," she whispers, "sometimes quiet is irresistible." She winks, slips away in a cloud of jasmine and leaves you blinking. Hestia chuckles under her breath, the sound like a wooden spoon tapping the rim of a clay pot. She stirs the embers. Sparks dance upward, painting lazy constellations in the smoky air. You watch one spark twist higher and imagine it floating down to some distant farmhouse hearth, landing softly to remind a weary shepherd's family that peace exists, even in a world of gods and giants. The goddess offers you another sip of honey water. You taste cinnamon, orange blossom, maybe a hint of basil. Simple flavors, but suddenly more satisfying than ambrosia. Your eyelids droop as Hestia hums that old pre-Iliad lullaby again. The hearth's haze has barely lifted when Hestia decides it is time for a field trip. No thunderous portals, no winged chariots, just a polite tug at the sleeve of reality, and suddenly you are standing on the sun-bleached floor of Delphi's temple courtyard. The air is thin here, perfumed with laurel, oracle breath, and that singe of eternal fire that seems to say, "Don't touch. This is a plot device." Hestia's flame sits in a bronze tripod taller than you, fed by resinous pine. Priests in crisp linen fuss over it like nervous stagehands before opening night. One slips, nearly knocking over a jar of sacred oil. Another mutters a hymn that sounds suspiciously like an apology. You half expect Zeus to hurl a lightning bolt for the clumsiness, but he must be on coffee break. Hestia simply steadies the priest with a nod, as if to whisper, "Relax, we've all spilled something." Delphi is the spiritual Wi-Fi router of Greece, broadcasting prophecy and questionable investment advice. And at its center glows Hestia's flame, origin point for every colony's first spark. It is from here that torchbearers embark, carrying crimson-painted lanterns packed with smouldering coals, ready to plant mini hearths across the Aegean like fiery business cards. A priest hands you one of those lanterns. It weighs less than expected, but radiates heat like an affectionate cat. You follow the procession down the Parnassian slopes toward a waiting trireme. Sailors greet you with olive-wood oars and a playlist of sea shanties featuring heroic falsetto. As the ship cuts through cobalt water, your lantern flickers but never dies. A quick joke surfaces. Why did the sacred flame refuse to board a budget airline? It didn't want to deal with excess carriage fees. The flame sputters in sympathy. Out here, waves slap the hull in lazy applause. Night falls, stars sprinkle across the sky like sesame on flatbread. The helmsman tells you the route. First stop Euboea, then onward to a brand new colony rumoured to have fresh soil and zero property taxes. You cradle the lantern, imagining every future hearth that will trace its lineage to this glowing coal. Mainstream fact time. Greek colonial charters legally required founders to light their settlement's very first fire from the mother city's Prytaneion, or failing that, from Delphi. It wasn't just symbolic. Without the rite, the colony wasn't considered legitimate, much like trying to open a coffee shop without Wi-Fi. Halfway across the strait, a rogue gust snuffs a sailor's torch. He He panics, shouting that the omens are ruined. Hestia rolls up imaginary sleeves, leans over your lantern, and exhales. The tiniest ember leaps to life on the man's wick. Crisis averted, melodrama postponed. You note that in Sparta, couriers supposedly ran relay races with hollow fennel stalks filled with embers, a quirky tidbit scholars love because it sounds like ancient Greeks invented the first eco-friendly thermos. Landfall. You step onto unfamiliar sand that squeaks underfoot, greeted by colonists who look both excited and severely sleep-deprived. They form a circle around a stone pit, eyes wide as you tip your lantern, birthing a modest tongue of flame. Cheers erupt. Someone breaks out reed pipes and a toddler attempts interpretive dance with a goat. The first offering, a loaf studded with figs, is pinched off and tossed gently into the fire. Smoke rises, carrying the scent of caramelized fruit back toward the motherland. Historians still argue whether these first fire ceremonies doubled as census moments, a head count disguised as holy duty. Some inscriptions tally participants right after the ignition, suggesting an ancient version of "sign here to confirm you were at the meeting." Days blur into sea spray and campfire smoke as you hop from islet to islet along the Cyclades. Each time the ritual repeats, a new pit, a fresh spark, a wave of relieved applause. You start rating them like a food critic. Naxos flame, bright colour, subtle piney notes, ambiance slightly ruined by bickering over goat ownership. Light joke number 2 arrives when a sailor tries roasting olives directly in the sacred fire. They explode like tiny grenades, peppering tunics with oily shrapnel. Hestia laughs, yes, laughs. A sound soft enough to make Poseidon's storms pause for a beat. She waves a hand, and the flame steadies, unbothered by culinary warfare. Eventually, the voyage loops back toward the mainland. You think you're heading straight for home, but no. Hestia insists on a detour through the Gulf of Corinth, where a lonely mountain shrine keeps a shard of her flame in a terracotta beehive. The keeper there is 90 years old and claims the ember has never been extinguished, not even during the Persian sackings. He leans close and confides that he sometimes toasts bread on it at dawn because even goddesses approve of crunch. You decide he's living his best life. As you prepare to leave, he gifts you a fennel stalk torch wrapped in rosemary sprigs, insurance against sea breezes and, possibly, vampires. You accept, wondering if rosemary-scented fire might actually keep Ares calmer. Back aboard the trireme, wind fills the sails like a sigh. You and Hestia share a quiet moment at the prow, lanterns glowing beside you. Far behind, faint hearthlights bloom in every new settlement, constellations mirroring the sky. Joke number 3 sneaks in when a deckhand asks if the goddess offers loyalty points for each colony lit. You reply that she only accepts flame miles, redeemable for free loaves of honey bread. Near dawn, Olympus appears on the horizon, its marble peaks rosy under first light. You walk the final stretch carrying your original lantern, ember still intact, a stubborn little sun. The other gods await headline news. Did you conquer? Did you fall in? The next flicker of consciousness finds you curled beside Olympus's ever-busy hearth, head pillowed on a rolled-up cloak that still smells faintly of rosemary from that fennel torch detour. Logs pop, sparks drift like lazy fireflies. You sit up just in time to watch another grand procession sweep past. Gold plates, silk banners, a full brass ensemble announcing the groundbreaking of yet another marble monument. Hermes zips by wearing his official ribbon-cutting scissors badge. He prints them himself. The target this time? A brand new temple for Athena, perched on a cliff so steep that even mountain goats demand elevators. You glance at Hestia. She's still on her cushion, stirring a cauldron of barley porridge while humming last night's sea shanty. No banners, no band, no architectural committee arguing about column styles. Just warmth, breakfast, and the fragrance of cinnamon drifting into the corridors. And that's when the question lands, like a soft olive pit in your thoughts. Why doesn't Hestia have sprawling temples of her own? The other Olympians compete for patron city status the way influencers chase sponsorships. Yet the goddess whose flame lights every doorway seems content with plain hearthstones. You step outside Olympus for answers, materializing in bustling Corinth. Stalls overflow with red-figured pottery, citrus and gossip. The skyline bristles with temples, Aphrodite's cliff-top sanctuary, Poseidon's seaside colonnade, Apollo's gleaming facade, all vying for pilgrim selfies. But where is Hestia's grand shrine? You find a modest hearth in the city hall. That's it, built of brick. No marble lions, no 10-meter-tall statues, just a steady fire and a low stone bench. Mainstream historical fact time. Across Greece, only a handful of standalone temples to Hestia are attested, far fewer than those of Zeus, Hera, or even niche deities like the river god Kephisos. Her primary altar was the public hearth, Prytaneon, the civic kitchen and town nerve centre rolled into one. You wander inside Corinth's Prytaneon. Officials sign scrolls, debate grain taxes, and nosh on olive tapenade straight from the jar, apparently a city council perk. At room centre, the communal fire crackles. No priestly barriers, no admission fee. Anyone can approach, warm their hands, or whisper a wish on the rising smoke. A clerk offers you bread still steaming from stone ovens lining the wall. One bite, crispy crust, soft crumb, hint of fennel seed, and the hearth's spell is clear. Who needs grandiosity when you've cornered the market on comfort? Your exploration continues northward to Thessaly's farmland. In a tiny village, you spot a curious roadside booth advertising, "Shrine to go." Turns out shepherds travelling with flocks carried portable braziers, little bronze bowls with coals from the village hearth, so they could offer Hestia morning crumbs even when camping under the stars. It's the original food truck model, minus the catchy jingle. One shepherd invites you to drop barley kernels into the embers. They pop like sleepy popcorn before vanishing in wisps of fragrant smoke. Next stop, a sumptuous temple district in Delphi you somehow missed earlier. Construction cranes, i.e. burly men with ropes, hoist limestone blocks, while a sculptor chisels Apollo's cheekbones into next year's trend definition. Off to one side you find a smaller workshop, stocked with dozens of half-finished statues labelled Hestia, on hold. The sculptor explains, somewhat embarrassed, that wealthy donors promise to fund her temple, but every time they save enough drachmas, another war, drought, or overdue wine bill drains the pot. Chuckling, he adds joke number 2. If Hestia waited for donors, she'd still be sketching floor plans in the Bronze Age. Back on Olympus for lunch, the contrast sharpens. Zeus buzzes about a thunder theatre renovation. Hera finalizes a new line of jealousy-proof wedding rings. And Dionysus tests a grape-infused confetti cannon. You step aside just in time. Hestia offers slices of soft cheese drizzled with thyme honey, and there are lines for it. Gods, muses, dryads, and at least one confused sphinx queue quietly. No statues needed. The temple is wherever she ladles sweetness onto bread. Joke number 3 emerges when Hermes, forever the marketing guru, suggests branding the hearth Hestia Hub, with subscription tiers, bronze, silver, and ambrosia plus. Hestia smiles, pats his shoulder, and hands him a warm fig, effectively a divine no. The plan evaporates like steam off a soup pot. You begin noticing the subtle architecture of her influence. The hearth sits at literal centre in Greek house designs. Walls radiate out like petals from that warm core. Guests are seated facing it. Infants receive their first taste of cereal before it. Even soldiers heading to war circle the fire 3 times for protection. Every single event loops back to her glow. And here's the kicker. Because every home has a hearth, every hearth honours Hestia, meaning she boasts more temples than all the flashy gods combined. Billions of bricks, stones, and cooking pots smoking contentedly day and night. That's the ultimate humble flex. As evening shades Olympus violet, you recall the portable ember you carried across seas. One teeny coal, infinite warmth. You think of those half-built statues, of marble sponsors who never write the check. Maybe the greatest tribute isn't white stone, but a loaf shared quietly at bedtime. A mother lighting morning coals. Dawn creeps over Olympus in soft rose and saffron, and you've only just scraped sleep from your eyes when the next episode of divine matchmaking begins. A blast of seawater whooshes down the hallway. Poseidon has arrived, trident gleaming, beard pre-salted. He's carrying a shell the size of a couch cushion, allegedly a small token of affection. Not to be outdone, Apollo materializes in a shimmer of sunbeams, clutching a golden lyre and rehearsing what he swears is an original love ballad. Spoiler, it sounds suspiciously like yesterday's hymn, with the words "my radiant hearth girl" shoehorned in. You're almost impressed. After all, Olympus usually reserves this level of spectacle for weddings, war councils, or Dionysus's monthly karaoke night. But today, both suitors are laser-focused on one remarkably calm goddess who is, still seated by the fire, stirring porridge. Poseidon strikes first, trying casual. He leans on his trident like it's a fashion cane. "So, Hestia," he rumbles, voice echoing like a conch. "How about we merge our domains, fire and water? Think of the steam baths." Steam baths are probably the best pickup line he's got. Before she can answer, Apollo glides in, lyre chord ringing like sunlight on polished marble. "Ignore the fish king, warm heart. Come inspire my music. Together, we'll compose symphonies that outshine Helios himself." He winks, and somewhere in the distance, a choir of cicadas faints from second-hand charm. Hestia smiles and, as you've come to expect, politely says no. No fireworks, no drama, just a firm, steady refusal delivered like she's reminding them the soup will scorch if left unattended. Poseidon's waves retreat a full centimetre. Apollo's chord wobbles off key. You can almost hear a celestial record scratch. The two gods blink, recalibrate, and double down. Trident twirls, lyre riffs. Compliments fly like errant arrows. Yet every attempt is met by another gentle decline. Apollo finally tries humour. "What if I write you an ode?" Working title, "Flame of My Heart Steer." You groan, louder than Hephaestus's forge. That pun alone should ban him from Olympus Wi-Fi. Joke number 1, logged. Poseidon tries grandeur. "I'll carve your likeness into coral spires. My sea nymphs will sparkle your name in pearls around the Aegean." Hestia merely ladles more porridge, hands Poseidon a bowl, and quietly suggests he add a pinch of sea salt after tasting. You watch the ocean god deflate faster than a punctured blowfish. Here's the mainstream historical fact sliding into your observations. In the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite, Hestia swears an oath on Zeus's head to remain forever free from marriage, securing her place among the virgin goddesses alongside Artemis and Athena. It wasn't just mythic gossip. Many Greek city-states honoured her with special vows of chastity, seeing her neutrality as essential to domestic harmony. Poseidon and Apollo pace in circles, each waiting for the other to admit defeat. At last, Zeus wanders in, curious about the ruckus. One glance at Hestia's serene face, and he chuckles. "Boys, you know the rules." She said no. Then, in a rare display of brotherly wisdom, he steamrolls the conversation into a breakfast meeting about temple budget cuts. Poseidon sulks. Waves lap his ankles. Apollo pretends he's late for a sunbeam carpeting appointment and vanishes. Hestia exhales, a tiny sigh you almost miss, and returns to her cooking. You realize she's rewritten Olympus's unspoken gender script. Power here is usually measured by conquests, trophies, or high-drama love triangles. Hestia gains authority through abstention. By reserving herself, she becomes neutral ground, a Switzerland of divine affairs. Joke number 2 slips in, as you picture a marble sign behind her reading, "No flirting beyond this point. Violators will be fed porridge." Later, you follow her into the mortal realm again, this time to a women's festival in Thessaly. There, priestesses honour Hestia with weaving contests rather than marriage rituals. They craft circular tapestries, symbolising hearth fires, each featuring a tiny flame stitched in saffron thread. Winners receive not gold, not jewels, but a fresh loaf of sesame bread, which they must break and share on the spot. Comfort over spectacle always. A fringe tidbit pops up as an elderly priestess whispers that some remote villages told tales of a suitor's test. Any god or mortal who tried to woo Hestia had to keep a single spark alive for 40 nights without sleeping. Legend claims Apollo managed 39 before nodding off. The spark allegedly burned a neat hole in his favourite toga. No surviving source backs this, but it's too delightful to dismiss. Back on Olympus, word of Hestia's continued autonomy spreads. Artemis swings by with a grin that says, "Welcome to the club." Athena nods approvingly, adjusting her helmet like a proud older sister. Hera even gifts Hestia a brand new ladle inscribed with, "To the Peacekeeper." A rare olive branch from the Queen of Grudges, joke number 3, because you catch Ares side-eyeing that ladle like it might be sharper than any of his spears. Your reflection turns inward. Mortals below emulate their gods. Some daughters vow to remain single and serve city hearths, becoming public caretakers called Hestiades. Others blend the symbolism, lighting bridal torches from Hestia's flame to signify a balance between new household and eternal home. Either way, her example ripples outward, reshaping expectations quietly but persistently. As evening glows honey gold, the suitor kerfuffle winds down. Poseidon returns to counting shipwrecks. Apollo polishes his ego by inventing new musical modes, and Hestia? She sets out bowls of warm milk mixed with crushed dates, invites you to sip and almost smiles at your sleepy grin. Your dreams smell like roasted barley and pomegranate smoke, so it's no surprise that when you blink awake, Olympus has turned into a buffet line the length of a Homeric epic. Marble tables sag under platters of honey-glazed figs, spit-turned lamb, and amphorae sweating with wines so sweet, Dionysus stamped it dessert only. The official reason for this calorie explosion? A grand communal feast, offered partly to celebrate yet another of Zeus's weather control promotions, but mostly because the gods need no excuse to throw a potluck. You barely stand before Hermes hustles past, thrusting a menu tablet into your hands. "Read fast," he chirps. "We've got thundercloud sushi, Poseidon's sea salt sorbet, and a limited edition ambrosia cupcake. Oh, and don't touch anything until she does." He jerks a thumb toward the hearth, where Hestia is already ladling a tiny spoonful of porridge into a wooden saucer. Every eye, immortal, nymph, and one very confused cyclops, tracks that spoon like it's the final rose on Olympus' Bachelor. Hestia lifts the saucer, murmurs a blessing, and tips the first bite into the flame. Only then does the feast officially begin. You feel an invisible switch click from standby to party. Plates clatter, Aulus pipes trill, and Ares attempts a victory jig that looks suspiciously like someone tripping over an invisible spear. Mainstream historical fact strolls in wearing an apron. In classical Greece, both public and private sacrifices opened with a small portion, often a pinch of barley or a sip of wine, cast into the hearth for Hestia. Without that opening gesture, the ceremony was considered invalid, much like trying to host Thanksgiving with the oven unplugged. You grab a skewer of honey-drizzled goat, but before taking a bite, Hestia gently clears her throat. Right, protocol. You pivot toward the hearth, break off a morsel and drop it into the flames. The goat sizzles, releasing a smoky perfume that mingles with rosemary from yesterday's fennel torch. Somewhere, a muse sighs with culinary contentment. Cue light joke number 1 as you imagine modern dinner parties adopting this rule. Nobody touched the charcuterie until Grandma flings the first brie into the fireplace. Considering how fast Uncle Marvin lunges for cheese, it might actually maintain order. The feast unfolds in layered courses. A chorus of satyrs pumps out folksy dance tunes while nymphs weave through the crowd sprinkled with powdered sugar. Treat or exfoliant, could be both. Each dish follows the same script. Assemble, admire, deliver first bite to Hestia, then smear your toga with sauce. You notice something else. Every libation, even Poseidon's seafoam punch, is poured twice. First trickle for Hestia, second for general consumption. Dionysus tries to accelerate the process by dual-wielding wine pitchers, sloshing so enthusiastically that Hera breaks her 9-size streak to fetch towels. Hours pass in a warm haze of harp chords and chicken on a stick. You dip through conversation clusters, Hephaestus bragging about self-cleaning cauldrons, Aphrodite teasing Ares with olive pit tosses, Artemis negotiating leash laws for mythical hounds. But no matter where you wander, you can always trace your steps back by following the invisible gravitational pull of Hestia's flame. It anchors the festival like the central pole of a carnival tent, quiet, indispensable, and somehow never getting sticky fingers. Historians still argue whether this first taste tradition has prehistoric roots in communal fire worship, or if it crystallized during the archaic period when city-states needed a unifying ritual. Either way, the consensus is clear. Deny Hestia her nibble and risk cosmic customer service complaints. Mid-feast, Zeus demands a thunderous toast, literally thunderous. He shakes an amphora until lightning crackles along the rim. Everyone lifts cups but freezes, a collective, "Oh, wait" moment, because the first drop belongs to, guess who? Zeus coughs, sheepish, and dribbles a sparkly splash into the hearth. The fire dances violet for a heartbeat, then settles, apparently satisfied. Light joke number 3. Even the Sky King has to wait his turn, proof that manners outrank megawatts. Feeling bold, you saute up to the hearth with a novelty dish you cobbled together from leftovers, grape-stuffed olives, wrapped in honeyed phyllo. Because sleep deprivation fuels creativity, you present it to Hestia with a wink. She samples a corner, deems it unexpectedly delightful, and flicks the ceremonial first crumb into the coals. The olive pops, sparks green, and a cheer ripples through nearby diners. You've invented fusion snacks and inadvertently started a trend. Hermes is already drafting marketing scrolls. The evening's last rays fade into deep cerulean, and torches ring the dining hall, mirroring constellations overhead. Musicians switch to slower tempos, murmurs soften as bellies stretch. You catch Hestia wielding her ladle like a maestro's baton, orchestrating the transition from raucous feast to mellow digestive. One by one, gods deposit leftovers at her station. A fig wedge here, a spoonful of barley there. Each addition hisses in the embers, releasing gentle aromatics that lull the crowd like sandalwood incense. Apollo strums a lullaby. Even Ares yawns so wide he nearly swallows his shield. As calm descends, you recall earlier travels. Delphi's lantern, Colony's first sparks, weave circle brides, and of course, that suitor's test myth. All these snapshots revolve around a single idea, that sharing the first taste is sharing trust. A simple bite melting on tongues, reminding immortals and mortals alike there's comfort in small ritual. Soon plates are empty, conversations drift to whispers, and the hearth glows soft peach. Hestia pats the rim of the cauldron, one final flourish. Embers inhale, exhale, like they too are full. You blink awake to find the marble under your cheek has morphed into creamy travertine. The air is thicker, salted by the Tiber and laced with garum and basil. Hestia sits beside you, same serene smile, but here everyone calls her Vesta. Welcome to Rome. Before you rises the circular temple of Vesta, a stone tholos tucked inside the forum like a colossal bread loaf. 6 white-clad priestesses, Vestal virgins, glide around a glowing hearth. Their sandals are felted, so the only sound is the soft crackle of oak. One sister feeds new kindling. The others hold their breath until the flame steadies, then exhale in unison like a well-rehearsed lullaby. Mainstream fact checks in. Vestals served 30 consecutive years, 10 learning, 10 doing, 10 teaching, after which they retired with pensions and prime real estate. Their presence sanctified contracts, wills, even gladiator games. A nod from a Vestal could halt an execution faster than you can say, "Hail Caesar." Vesta gestures, handing you a cedar shaving. When you slide it into the embers, the city outside seems to surge awake. Legionaries clank down the Via Sacra, vendors holler about fried dormice, magistrates shuffle papers, Romans swear the empire's fate is tied to this single hearth, snuff the flame, kiss the republic goodbye. A braying donkey ambles by, neck draped in pastry rings. Joke number 1. Apparently you've stumbled into Vestalia, the festival where millers reward their long-suffering beasts of burden with day-spa carb bling. One donkey noses your cloak for leftover grape-stuffed olives. Vestals parade through the forum, sprinkling mola salsa, sacred salt cakes, at thresholds. Fringe tidbit. The recipe is top secret. Some whisper it contains a pinch of hearth ash. Others swear by a 2-century-old sourdough starter. Either way, it tastes like crumbly history. Food stalls bustle. Remembering Greek protocol, you break off a crumb of honeyed sausage roll and drop it into a brazier before you eat. The vendor nods and slips you an extra fig. Good manners, it seems, transcend language. Nearby, a senator drones about moral decline while eyeing the snack cart. He pauses whenever a vestal glides past. Touch from these priestesses can pardon a condemned man on the spot. Power in a linen veil. Historians still argue whether the infamous penalty for vestals who broke their vow, being buried alive in the campus sceleratus, was ever enforced or mainly theatrical terror. Surviving records list only a handful, but the threat alone kept Rome's gossip columns sizzling. You wander into the house of the Vestals behind the temple. Cloistered gardens, roses, laurel, statues of retired sisters smiling like they just discovered infinite paid vacation. A novice practices capturing hot coals in a bronze pot for state ceremonies. You flash back to your Delphi lantern run and give her a thumbs up. She nearly drops the lid, but Vesta steadies her with a glance. Lunchtime. You dodge toga-wearing foodies to snag garum-glazed rolls. A posted decree fines bakers double if their ovens spark fires during Vestalia. Sensible, given Rome's flammable apartment blocks. You recall that shepherd with a fennel torch subscription and chuckle. Afternoon heat turns the forum stones into griddles. Vesta leads you back inside the temple, lavender tossed on the coals perfuming the dusk. Columns cast long shadows that sway like sleepy metronomes. Joke number 3. Imagine a modern corporate workshop titled The Vesta Method. Reduce workplace drama by maintaining one really good snack station. Evening choir practice starts up in a basilica next door. Teen boys rehearsing hymns to Jupiter, voices cracking like fresh amphorae. Vesta drops a bay leaf onto the coals for acoustic balance. The smoke threads through the oculus and unspools into twilight, where bats flit like punctuation marks. Outside, torches sputter along the Via Nova. A litter carrying 2 senior Vestals sweeps past. Lictors clear the crowd with polished fasces. Your tour guide brain notes the perks: front row seats at games, their own property, and a legal right to travel without male escort. A rolling calm zone that even rowdy legionaries respect. Street vendors pivot to late-night fare, fava beans sizzling in sesame oil, honey-soaked pistachio bites. You pinch off another crumb for the nearest brazier before tasting. A praetorian on patrol salutes your offering. Either divine etiquette impresses him, or he wants your pistachios. A sudden hush rolls down the avenue as the emperor's torchlit entourage approaches. Yet every head still turns toward the temple first, waiting for that steady glow to confirm Rome is safe for another night. The Vestals' plain wool veils outshine all the purple cloaks and military crests. Back inside, final prayers drift like feathers. The chief priestess traces a circle in ash, sealing the day's peace. You realize she has memorized every crumb ever tossed onto those coals. Tomorrow the flame will be fed again. Tomorrow donkeys will don pastry halos, and senators will pause mid-speech to steal a whiff of wood smoke. Empires rise and riot, but the hearth stays lit. That's Vesta's quiet rebellion against chaos, and it works. Travertine tilts, basil fades, and in a blink, Olympus reels back, its familiar hearth crackling a welcome. The journey proves fire can speak Greek, Latin, or the universal language of leftover bread, but its promise is always the same: stay, rest, breathe. Twilight settles over the marble terraces of Olympus, painting the columns rose gold one last time before shadows claim them. You're perched by Hestia's hearth, watching the embers pulse like sleepy fireflies. Down below, the mortal world is changing its tune. New bells toll where temple hymns once echoed, and incense smoke curls from unfamiliar altars. The old gods feel the draught. You drift with Hestia to 4th century Athens, where philosophers now whisper more about bishops than about Bacchus. The Parthenon columns still frame the sky, but the crowds file past carrying small wooden crosses instead of laurel wreaths. At dusk, a lone woman pauses at her doorway, breaks off a crumb of barley bread, and, out of muscle memory, tosses it toward the house hearth. It vanishes in a cedar-scented glow, and for a breath, Hestia's presence lingers like a half-remembered lullaby. Just then, an imperial edict arrives on horseback. Theodosius I has banned public pagan rituals. Mainstream historical fact. By AD 391, the emperor's decrees shuttered many temples, including Rome's once revered temple of Vesta. Vestal virgins, once untouchable, received pink-slip pensions and polite instructions to vacate. Some adapt. Rumour claims one opens a bakery beside the Tiber, marketing eternal flame sourdough. You'd buy a loaf just for the label. The scene shifts west to Rome itself. You step into the Forum, but the round temple of Vesta is gated, its sacred fire officially extinguished. Only a curl of warm ash clings to the hearthstone like a stubborn cat, refusing to leave when the furniture's gone. A junior cleric eyes the place warily, muttering that the Pope prefers controlled flames. Candlelight, yes. Pagan fire pits, no. Light joke number 1 pops into your head. New management, same heat, different seating plan. Beside you, Hestia kneels, cups the last glow in her palms. No thunder shakes the sky. No dramatic score. She simply exhales, and the ember rises like a tiny comet, drifting into the Roman dusk. Even the cleric pauses, hat half doffed, as if sensing a quiet goodbye. You journey north to a villa near Ravenna. Winter wind rattles shutters, but inside, a grandmother coaxes supper over a humble brazier. She still whispers the old formula, to the hearth, first and last, even while a mosaic of Christ watches from the wall. Quirky tidbit, some late Roman cookbooks include a marginal note, add pinch of ash if blessed hearth missing, as though seasoning could substitute for divine insurance. Historians still argue whether domestic devotion to Hestia truly persisted beneath Christian veneer, or if these stories are later romantic inventions. Excavations turn up hearth offerings well into the 6th century, yet written sources go silent. Maybe the goddess slips between lines, hiding where footnotes fear to tread. Your tour presses on to Constantinople, where Hagia Sophia's domes gleam. Crowds crush in to hear chants swirling like swallows, but even here, kitchens bustle with bread shaped into small sunbursts, an echo of the eternal flame reborn as pastry art. Call it semi-pagan sourdough, blessed by both yeast and nostalgia. Back on Olympus, the gods hold a subdued council. Dionysus offers mulled wine for old times, though it smells faintly of existential crisis. Hermes doodles marketing logos. Retro religion, now with 30% more nostalgia. Ares pokes the hearth like someone who's lost the remote, yet they all circle Hestia, waiting for her verdict. She rises, shawl glowing ember orange. The kitchen light never truly dies, she murmurs, voice softer than falling ash. In that moment, you realize her domain was never marble or state decrees. It was the instinct to gather, to warm, to share a first bite. Governments may outlaw temples, but no law snuffs out the need for hot soup on a cold night. She steps forward into the cosmic dark, taking you through centuries in a heartbeat. Medieval huts crackle with peat. A Viking longhouse glows amber while storytellers whisper sagas. Remember that rosemary-scented torch? In an Edo period tea house, coals simmer under an iron kettle. A monk flicks a grain of rice to the warmth before sipping matcha. Somewhere, an overzealous health inspector asks if dropping carbs in open flame violates fire codes. Everywhere, hearths flicker, sometimes in brass ovens, sometimes blue LEDs under electric kettles. Each glow carries the faint DNA of Hestia's first spark, smuggled through history in stew pots and honeymoon candles. You settle once more beside Olympus's hearth, now smaller, quieter, but stubbornly alive. A single coal pulses like a heartbeat in meditation. Hestia nods to you, as if entrusting that ember to any traveller who will keep it moving. Maybe that traveller is you, balancing phone in one hand, mug in the other, pausing before dinner to breathe gratitude into the steam. The goddess sits, stirs one last pot, something fragrant with lavender and thyme. She ladles a spoonful into the fire, the flame brightens, and you taste the promise. As long as someone warms, seasons and shares, the sanctuary endures. Temples crumble, empires fall, but the simple act of offering the first and final bite keeps the contract signed. Logs shift, sparks spiral upward, carrying stories to places even satellites haven't named yet. And somewhere down on Earth, a night shift nurse microwaves soup, pressing her palm to the hot paper cup, the way ancient sailors once cupped lanterns from Delphi. The ritual persists, not carved in stone, but written in warmth. The last ember glows soft as candle wax, its light sliding across marble and memory alike. You exhale slowly, letting shoulders sink, letting every clang of Olympian armor fade into distant hum. The hearth's hush deepens, breaths lengthen, and even the restless gods settle like drowsy birds on high rafters. Picture the ember, drifting downward through time, finding your own familiar space. A kitchen nightlight, the amber coil inside an electric stove, maybe the gentle flicker of a candle you forgot to blow out, but now seems perfectly safe. It radiates quiet promises. You are home, you are warm, you are enough. Feel the floor steady beneath you, cool but comforting. Air moves at an unhurried pace, carrying faint hints of lavender, cinnamon, and something sweet. Perhaps that honeyed bread Hestia saved just for late hours like these. Each breath draws in calm, each exhale melts tension like butter on toast. Outside, any remaining chatter dims into a soft, distant murmur. Streetlights glowing like modern temple torches, cars whispering along roads that curve gently away. Inside, time loosens its grip. Minutes stretch, then blur, until only the steady rhythm of your heartbeat keeps count. Allow eyelids to drift half-closed, lashes brushing the threshold of dream. The ember's light pulses slower, fainter, yet ever steady. It needs no roaring blaze, only this quiet, faithful glow to guard the hush. Imagine it tucking itself into the coals of your mind, banked safe for dawn. As you nestle deeper into pillows, the last thought lingers like warm bread against your palm. Wherever you wander, a hearth awaits in the simplest act of sharing. Let that assurance cradle you now, settling softly, kindly, into perfect rest. You don't know it yet, but this won't be the usual heroic tale of swords and sand. Dionysus doesn't play that way. His myths are tangled, inconsistent, a little sticky with fruit juice. Even the Greeks couldn't quite agree on whether he was a foreign god or a native one, a gentle spirit of intoxication or something older and darker. Tonight begins with him walking through the wilderness. No entourage, no lightning bolts, just barefoot on the dust, with a faint scent of fermentation trailing behind him. That's where you see him first. Not on Olympus, but somewhere far outside the city, where the trees bend a little closer, and the air feels slightly off-script. You try to follow him, and that's when the plants start moving. No, really. Ivy seems to spring up around your ankles. The trees sway as if trying to eavesdrop. The path behind you disappears in vines. You're not sure whether this is divine magic or just bad GPS. This is not a god who appears in marble. He appears in sweat, in soil, in the dregs of the last wine jug. His presence doesn't crash in. It creeps, grows, ferments, and you're suddenly, unmistakably, inside his story. Dionysus is called the twice-born, and honestly, that's not even the weirdest part. He's the only Olympian who spends his time among mortals, disguised as one of them, and sometimes as something entirely else. He wears no crown, unless you count the grapevines in his hair. He rides no chariot, unless it's pulled by panthers. Yes, panthers. Historians still argue whether he was originally a Thracian vegetation spirit, an Eastern fertility god imported from Phrygia, or just what happens when Greeks drink too long in the sun. His earliest worship appears not in polished city temples, but on hillsides, in caves, in places where the walls blur and shadows get theatrical. Tonight, though, he's alone. You see him stroll up to a fig tree, pluck a fruit without looking, and smile like it told him a joke. He passes you a sip of something from his cup. It's not wine, at least not any wine you've tasted. It tastes like time. And just as you start to feel like this might be a chill woodland picnic with the god of happy hour, a snake, slithers out of a basket nearby. Not toward you, thankfully. It just curls up beside Dionysus, like a bored house cat. He pets it absent-mindedly. The man radiates comfort and danger in equal measure. He starts humming. The ground joins in. You blink, and suddenly you're somewhere else. You're in a room carved from stone, but there's light like a golden evening pouring from the cracks. A woman screams, a thunderbolt, a smell like scorched honey. And there, lying perfectly still, is Semele, mortal princess, lover of Zeus, and the soon-to-be mother of Dionysus. Yes, we've gone back in time. Dionysus's story doesn't start with his triumph. It begins mid-catastrophe. Semele, poor thing, made the classic mistake of dating Zeus and then asking to see him in his true form. That's like asking your microwave to show you what's inside its soul. He appears as lightning. She combusts, and somehow, in the flaming mess, Zeus manages to pluck the fetus from her charred body and sew it into his own thigh. That's right. Dionysus gestated in Zeus's leg, and you thought your family was weird. You turn back to present-day Dionysus. He's grinning, as if remembering all of it. He pats his thigh, then winks. Birth is complicated, he mutters, handing you another sip. You nod solemnly, because what else do you do when the wine god casually recalls being thigh-born? And then, just as your eyelids start to droop, and the forest sounds like it's breathing with you, you hear something in the distance. Laughter. Female voices. Hooves. A beat on drums made from stretched animal skin. You have no idea what's coming, but Dionysus stands, brushes dust from his robe, and offers you a hand. Let's keep walking, he says. The path beneath your feet shifts. One moment it's packed earth, the next it's soft and springy like moss. You glance down to see it's now covered in wildflowers you didn't notice growing just moments ago. Dionysus doesn't comment. He just walks ahead, barefoot as ever, like this is all perfectly normal. You try to keep pace, dodging an occasional route that snakes out, as if trying to trip you for fun. You're beginning to understand that time doesn't move the same way in his company. The forest dims and then brightens again, like a flickering candle in a large room. And suddenly you're no longer among trees, but in the echoing halls of Mount Olympus. It's loud, too loud. Thunder booms, a baby cries. Somewhere nearby, someone is cursing in ancient Greek. You peer around a marble pillar and spot Zeus himself pacing furiously. His toga is scorched on the hem. There's ash on his brow and desperation in his eyes. You've arrived just in time to see the birth, or rebirth, of Dionysus. He's sewn up inside Zeus's thigh like a mythological kangaroo pouch. The god of thunder grimaces, grits his teeth, and with a grunt that shakes the columns, unzips himself, so to speak. And there he is, out tumbles Dionysus, pink and wriggly and somehow already smirking. There's no parade. No golden horn section. The other gods don't even show up. Hera, Zeus's wife, is pointedly not present. She's off somewhere smashing furniture and plotting passive-aggressive revenge. You can already feel she's not going to let this slide. And so the child is hidden, again. Because what's a Greek god without at least 2 sets of parents and 3 names? Zeus hands the baby to Hermes with all the grace of someone trying to sneak out of responsibility. Hide him. Somewhere leafy. Historians still argue whether this whole born from a thigh thing is symbolic of divine rebirth or just the ancient Greeks being weird for weirdness' sake. Either way, you have to respect the flair. Hermes doesn't waste time. One minute you're blinking at a stormy Olympus, the next you're in a jungle so green it practically hisses. Welcome to Mount Nisa. There's no consensus on where Nisa actually is. Some say it's in India, others point to Ethiopia, or even some dreamy fold of the Aegean landscape. Here, it's a jungle of tangled vines, thick fog, and the constant chirping of creatures you're better off not investigating. You're handed off again, this time to a group of women known only as the nymphs, or sometimes the rain nurses. They are graceful, eternally youthful, and definitely not just doing daycare for the gods. They're sworn to raise Dionysus far from Hera's reach. The baby is nestled into a goat's arms. Yes, a goat, and the animal bleats as if it's done this before. You're not exactly helpful, but you try. You peel grapes and sing lullabies that don't exist yet. The air smells of crushed herbs and something fermented. The boy grows fast. 1 minute he's crawling through ivy, the next he's running shirtless through the underbrush, chasing butterflies and laughing like he's had wine for breakfast, which he probably has. Goats bleat nearby, and you notice one is particularly obsessed with the child. Later you'll learn that this goat has a name, Amalthea, and may or may not be the same one who nursed Zeus back in the day. Greek myths have a thing for goat milk and poor childcare regulations. Every few days, someone tries to find Dionysus. Hera sends spies, owls, shadows, a very suspicious shrub. Each time, the nymphs outwit them. You help, once disguising the boy with mud and feathers. He giggles the entire time. And then, one day, the boy isn't just playing with grapes. He's speaking to them. You see vines bend when he walks. The local spring fizzes when he dips a finger in. His laughter makes the trees blossom. This is when you start suspecting that Dionysus doesn't just like wine, he is wine. The fermentation of chaos, the bubbling up of joy and destruction in equal measure, a god who will never wear armor or wield a sword, but who can unravel minds with a sip. One evening, as the sun slouches down behind the trees, you sit with him and ask, "So, what now?" He looks at you with eyes that seem too ancient for someone still skipping stones across the stream. "We travel," he says. And just like that, Mount Lysa dissolves around you. The jungle peels back. The vines retract. You're standing on the deck of a rickety wooden ship, docked in a strange, bright land. You can smell spices, hear foreign tongues. The journey is about to begin. You're not sure where the boy ends and the god begins, but you're definitely going with him. The ship groans as it pushes off from the shore, creaking like an old man settling into a warm bath. You steady yourself on a pile of rope, watching Dionysus lean casually against a mast, already sipping from a clay cup that, suspiciously, no one remembers bringing aboard. He looks far too comfortable for someone leaving the only home he's ever known. You're not entirely sure if he's heading somewhere or being pulled. The sea air is thick with salt and orange blossom. Dolphins leap playfully in the distance, though you're starting to suspect they might be spies. Nothing near Dionysus stays normal for long. The voyage lasts days or maybe weeks. Time blurs. On board, you pass evenings listening to him tell riddles that end in punchlines you don't understand until the next morning. One night, the stars shift shape, aligning to form what appears to be a grape cluster. He points at it and laughs softly. "Everything's connected," he says, and you believe him. Eventually you land somewhere that smells like cinnamon and dust. It's hot, blindingly bright. Palm trees sway like they're trying to nap. You step into the sand and instantly regret not packing lighter clothes. Dionysus doesn't sweat. Of course he doesn't. He's now older, taller, his face sharper. There's a restlessness about him now. The child of the forest has become a traveller. He begins wandering across deserts, into marketplaces, through villages that don't even have names yet. And you go with him, half guide, half tourist, half snack holder. Yes, 3 halves. Nothing is rational anymore. Everywhere he goes, people either fear him, worship him, or mistake him for a wandering lunatic. He teaches locals how to ferment strange fruits. You watch him convince a suspicious warlord to drink something called date wine. A few hours later, the warlord is dancing on a table and offering Dionysus his daughter's hand in marriage, his horse, and something that might be a llama. Historians still argue whether these wanderings were actual geopolitical campaigns, symbolic myth cycles, or ancient Greek attempts to explain the spread of wine cultivation. But you? You remember the look on the face of a Babylonian merchant when his clay wine jar began to hum. Somewhere in Lydia, Dionysus picks up an entourage. They call themselves the Thiassos, a wild band of satyrs, nymphs, Maenads, and creatures that might be goats, might be men, and might just be hangovers with legs. You're not sure when they all arrived, but suddenly the forest is full of drum beats and laughter. They follow Dionysus with absolute devotion, occasionally arguing over who gets to carry his thyrsus, a staff topped with a pine cone, wrapped in ivy, and on certain days mysteriously dripping honey. Your job becomes undefined. Sometimes you fetch figs, sometimes you interpret dreams. Once you have to break up a fight between a satyr and a tree, don't ask. Every morning there's a feast, and every evening a song. But it's not always joyful. In one town, Dionysus is denied entry. The locals mock him, call him a foreign trickster. That night, ivy bursts through their temple floors. Their sacred fountains run purple. You see the villagers the next morning, dazed and hungover, with grapevines wrapped around their arms, like makeshift apologies. They never mock him again. There's a power rising in him now, like the warmth that sneaks up on you during your third glass of wine. Friendly, inviting, but with something darker lurking underneath. One evening, sitting on a hill beneath a sky blooming with stars, he turns to you. "Do you think I'm real?" You don't answer, because at that moment, you're watching a woman turn into a leopard before your eyes. She stretches, purrs, then vanishes into the dark. You've long since stopped asking questions. Dionysus keeps walking, his bare feet leaving no marks in the sand. His cult grows with him, sprouting like mushrooms after a storm. He doesn't recruit. People just fall into rhythm. They dance until sunrise. They sleep in olive groves. They speak in riddles and wake with berry stains on their skin. And you sleep under the stars, with a goat skin for a pillow and dreams full of music. Then one day, somewhere in the mountains of Phrygia, he stops. There's a glade, a clearing filled with laughter and flickering torchlight. You step into it, and suddenly, the air tastes like time and wine and ancient secrets. You've arrived at his first real celebration. It isn't organized. There's no formal program. People just dance, cry, sing. Some tear at their clothes. Others fall asleep mid-revelation. And there in the center, Dionysus sits cross-legged, thyrsus in one hand, a cup in the other, smiling like he's been waiting forever. You join the dance. And when the sun finally rises over the hills, warm and golden like a honey-drizzled fig, you realize something. You're not just watching a myth unfold. You're inside it. You wake up tangled in vines. Not metaphorical ones, actual vines, curling gently around your arms like affectionate snakes. Somewhere nearby, a flute trills a lazy scale, then dissolves into laughter. Your head is full of dreams that don't quite feel like yours. Dionysus is already up, standing on a flat stone, arms raised as if to catch the morning light in his palms. He doesn't say, "Good morning." He just hands you a fig and starts walking again. This is how it goes for a while. You pass through lands where people live in reed houses, worship river spirits, and name their goats. You begin to recognize that Dionysus is more than just wine. He's change, movement, disruption that somehow feels like relief. Everywhere he goes, society is peeled back just a little. You see farmers turn into dancers, warriors weep in public, and a widow compose a drinking song that would make a satyr blush. Still, not everyone welcomes him. You arrive one day in a tidy village, square houses, straight roads, and the kind of people who dust their doorknobs. Dionysus approaches with his usual, slightly drunken grace. The villagers take one look at the ivy crawling behind him and bar the gates. "No cults," someone says. "We're a sober town." You're not sure who they thought they were talking to. That night, you hear drums, not the cheerful kind, the deep, slow kind that make your chest thump in sympathy. The village wakes to find their wells overflowing with sweet wine. Their olive groves pulse with purple light. Every sheep has wandered away, and someone's chicken now sings hymns in a suspiciously human voice. The villagers come out dazed and sticky. Dionysus smiles, tips his cup, and moves on. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth is metaphor or memory. Whether Dionysus was once a real traveling priest-king whose cult spread like wildfire, or whether the Greeks simply needed a god to explain what happens when everyone agrees to drop the rules for a night. Either way, the pattern repeats. And then you arrive in a place where the pattern breaks. It's Thebes. You've heard of it, of course. Grand city, powerful walls, drama with a capital D, Oedipus, Jocasta, tragic irony in bulk. But that's all in the future. Right now, Thebes is run by Pentheus, a man who hates chaos, noise, and anything remotely resembling a conga line. He's heard the rumors of Dionysus turning rivers to wine, of women wandering into the woods and coming back with lion blood under their fingernails, of spontaneous flute solos and identity confusion. So naturally, he bans it all. No worship of Dionysus, he declares. No dancing, no drinking, no ivy. And Dionysus? He shows up in disguise. Because of course he does. He dresses like a priest, or maybe a wanderer, or a rock star. You're not sure what to call the look, but it involves shimmering robes, gold earrings, and the kind of people are curious. The city's women in particular are intrigued. They sneak out to the woods, join the forbidden rites, and come back singing in languages no one remembers teaching them. You and Dionysus take up temporary residence in a surprisingly nice guest house. You have a room with lavender-scented sheets and a clear view of Pentheus's palace. You spend most evenings sipping wine that refills itself and pretending to be very unimpressed. Then Pentheus calls for him. He wants to interrogate this so-called priest, find out who he really is, put an end to the nonsense. You follow Dionysus to the palace. The guards hesitate but let you in. After all, what threat could a man in a dress pose? Inside, Pentheus rants, he mocks, he sneers. Dionysus barely blinks. He suggests quite reasonably that Pentheus go see for himself what these forest women are up to. But to do that, Pentheus will need a disguise, and so you find yourself helping the king into a dress. Yes, really. He's unsure about the sandals, but you assure him they bring out his eyes. Dionysus ties a ribbon in his hair, and you try very hard not to laugh. The king sneaks out, disguised as a Maenad, heading toward the woods where the forbidden rites unfold. You don't follow him. You already know how this story ends. Later that night, the women of Thebes, Pentheus's own mother among them, find a wild beast lurking in the forest. They tear it apart with their bare hands, eyes glazed with divine madness. When they return, drunk on frenzy and too many metaphors, they carry his head on a stick. Pentheus wanted to control the chaos. Instead, he became its latest sacrifice. The city quiets after that. No one bans Dionysus again. As you leave Thebes, Dionysus doesn't look triumphant, just resolved, like someone who knows this won't be the last time someone underestimates him. He turns to you and shrugs. People are funny. You nod, because what else do you say when the god of wine just orchestrated one of the weirdest revenge plots in mythological history? He hands you the thyrsus and says, "Your turn to carry it for a while." You grip the pine-cone-topped staff. It pulses faintly in your hand. The next part of the journey is about to begin. You don't sleep that night. Not really. You lie beneath a fig tree, the thyrsus beside you, humming gently like a cat snoring. The sky above is marbled with stars, but you can't stop thinking about Pentheus. So proud, so certain, so thoroughly torn apart. Dionysus is nowhere to be seen, just laughter in the trees, and a scent in the air, crushed grapes, torch smoke, and something ancient. By morning, he's back. Dionysus walks out of the forest, barefoot, hair tangled with ivy, robes damp with dew. He nods at you and says, "Come on, there's something I want you to see." You follow him through thickets and ravines, past startled birds and streams that burble like they're gossiping. By the time the sun is high, you emerge at a clearing by the sea. A single ship is docked nearby, old, weathered, the kind that creaks even when it's sitting still. You smell trouble and wine, which in Dionysus's case is basically the same thing. He grins. "I like to test people sometimes." You sit beside him on a rock and watch as a group of sailors clamber onto the beach. They're rough-looking men, salt-bitten skin, arms like anchor chains. They spot Dionysus and immediately mutter among themselves. "That's a rich-looking stranger," says one. eyeing the god's robe, which now appears to shimmer like a waterfall of gold thread. Bet he's got treasures. Let's offer him a ride and rob him once we're at sea. You raise an eyebrow. Dionysus smiles, sipping from a flask you didn't see him carry. Historians still argue whether this tale originated as a warning against hubris or simply as a seafarer's ghost story told to new crew members. Either way, it sticks. The sailors wave cheerfully and offer Dionysus a lift. He agrees, of course, always polite. You climb aboard behind him, unsure whether you're more nervous for him or for them. The ship casts off. The wind picks up. At first, it's normal. The crew hums sea shanties. One of them offers you a fish. You nod politely and try not to look at its eyes. Then, things shift. Ivy creeps up the mast, slowly, subtly. You notice it first, but no one else seems to. Then the ropes begin to writhe, like snakes stretching after a nap. The sail turns deep purple. The air smells overwhelmingly of fermented fruit. One of the sailors leans over to you and mutters, "What kind of wine did he bring?" You don't answer. You're watching Dionysus now, eyes closed, whispering something in a language the wind seems to understand. Then the animals arrive. Not real ones, at least not at first. The planks beneath your feet ripple. The deck blooms with fur and claw. Panther paws where barrels once were. Leopard tails curling from beneath the benches. The men panic. Screams. Someone tries to jump overboard. But the sea is now thick with vines, coiling, curling, swallowing. And then it happens. One by one, the sailors leap from the ship, splashing into the sea. But they don't sink or swim. They shimmer. Their arms elongate. Their legs fuse. Their skin smooths. Their cries become clicks. They become dolphins. Not metaphorically, actual dolphins. Sleek, silvery, and slightly embarrassed. One of them flips in the air and squeaks at you apologetically. Dionysus stands at the bow, laughing. Not cruelly, but like someone who just watched a slapstick routine and can't help but enjoy it. You, meanwhile, are gripping the railing, whispering, "Well, that escalated." He leans over. "I only turned the ones who were rude." You glance down at the sea. The dolphins are circling the boat, occasionally diving or performing awkward twirls. You suspect one of them is trying to ask for a second chance. Dionysus sips again, offers you the flask. It tastes like sunlight filtered through crushed plum skins. You feel your toes tingle. Later, when the boat docks again, there's no sign of Ivy, no panthers, just the god, you, and a few stunned fish watching from the shallows. You step onto the sand, glance back at the ship, and catch a last glimpse of dolphin tails vanishing into the blue. You turn to Dionysus. "Do all your boat trips end like that?" He shrugs. "Only when people get grabby." It's strange, despite everything, the transformations, the magic, the barely restrained madness. He never seems cruel, just balanced, as if joy and chaos are two sides of the same wine cup, and he's just trying to keep it from spilling too hard. That night, you sleep beside a small fire. Dionysus hums beside you, carving something into the sand with a vine, a spiral maybe, or a map of somewhere you haven't been yet. The sea murmurs, the air is warm, the stars have returned to their original shapes, and far out on the water, you hear the faint echoing splash of something sleek and playful, dancing just beneath the waves. You wake up to the sound of clinking cups and the faint, unmistakable gurgle of wine being poured. Dionysus is sitting cross-legged by the fire, sipping from a shallow bowl and staring at the waves like they've personally offended him. "We're going to Olympus today," he says without turning. You blink the sleep from your eyes. "You mean the actual Olympus?" He nods, setting his cup down in the sand. Time to make things official. You stretch your legs, brushing sand from your cloak. You're still not sure what counts as official when you're dealing with gods. But you've stopped asking too many questions, especially before wine. The road to Olympus isn't lined with gold. It's a jagged mountain path, steep and winding, where clouds drift low enough to wet your eyelashes. You climb for what feels like days, past ancient olive trees, forgotten shrines, and once, a sheep that stared at you a little too knowingly. By the time you reach the peak, you're breathless, and not just from the altitude. Olympus looms like a storm that decided to hold its shape. Marble colonnades rise from cloud banks. Everything smells faintly of lightning and bureaucracy. You step onto the polished stone floor and immediately feel underdressed. Dionysus, however, strolls in like he owns the place, which, technically, he soon will. The Olympians aren't thrilled to see him. Zeus lounges on his throne, trying very hard to look casual. Hera glares from her seat beside him, arms folded like she's bracing for another surprise marriage announcement. Athena polishes her spear, not looking up. Apollo strums his lyre, aggressively, off-key. You can feel the tension simmering like soup left too long on a divine stove. Zeus finally clears his throat. "We've received your petition." Dionysus smiles. "Lovely. A god being added to the Olympian roster isn't just a title change, it's a shift in cosmic balance. There are rules, hierarchies, petty rivalries older than stone. And Dionysus, with his wine-stained robes and mischievous aura, does not fit their mold. He's not born of two gods. He wandered, he danced. He turned pirates into dolphins and cities into puddles of emotion. He's unpredictable, wild, and worst of all, popular. Historians still argue whether Dionysus's elevation to Olympus was a reflection of shifting cultural values, wine and pleasure finally outpacing war and logic, or whether it was just the gods deciding it was safer to have him inside the club than throwing raves outside the gates. Either way, the decision is made. With a rumble of thunder, Zeus announces it. Dionysus shall take the 12th throne. Apollo snaps a lyre string. Hera sighs the sigh of someone who just lost an argument and knows it'll be used against her for centuries. And just like that, the god of wine, madness, and all things delightfully disordered, is officially one of the 12 Olympians. There's no coronation, no choir, no sparkly fireworks. But the air changes. You feel it, like the moment right before a toast, held breath, collective hush, and a strange, flickering hope. Dionysus turns to you and winks. Want to see the best part? You follow him past the thrones, down a hallway lined with carvings that flicker between past and future. He opens a gilded door and reveals a long room, half banquet hall, half jungle. Ivy creeps along the ceiling. A leopard naps under the table. There's music, but it seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. This is his space now, a place where boundaries blur. He pours 2 cups and hands you one. "To survival," he says. You clink. The wine is sweet and cold with a kick of something that tastes like midnight. And then you notice something. Someone is missing. You haven't seen Semele, Dionysus's mother, since she combusted in a fireball of divine exposure. You turn to him. "She didn't make it to Olympus, did she?" He shakes his head. "Not yet." The word hangs in the air, dense with promise. That's when you understand. His journey isn't over. He's climbed to the top of the divine ladder, yes, but he's not staying here for long. Because there's one more thing he has to do. The gods fade into background noise. The wine settles in your chest like warmth wrapped in memory. Dionysus leans back, smiling like someone who already knows the next 10 scenes. He doesn't explain. He doesn't have to. You know where you're going next. And it isn't up. It's down. You'd think Olympus would have better stairs, but no. To get to where Dionysus is going, you descend a cracked, mossy trail behind a waterfall that whispers your name in several languages. He walks ahead, unconcerned, humming a lullaby you're pretty sure hasn't been written yet. The air grows cold, damp, the kind that sticks to your lungs like cobwebs. Shadows lean closer. You follow the god of wine into the one place even most gods avoid, the underworld. Yes, that underworld. Home of Hades, population fluctuating. Decor, heavy on mist and regret. You've barely crossed the threshold when a chill creeps up your spine, part fear, part grapevine. Ivy's growing on the walls here too, reaching for the torchlight like it knows who's arrived. Dionysus isn't sneaking in. He walks like he owns the place, and weirdly, no one stops him. Even Charon, the famously cranky boatman, just nods and pushes his ferry a little closer to the shore. No coin needed, just a raised eyebrow and a silent understanding. You step aboard. The river Styx is darker than you imagined. Less water, more ink that smells of rust and forgotten letters. You pass lost souls muttering to themselves, skeletal fishermen still casting empty lines, and once a ghost dog wearing a sandal as a hat. Dionysus gives them a polite nod. "Back for your mother?" Charon asks without turning. "Always," Dionysus replies. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth represents redemption, psychological integration, or simply the Greeks trying to work through parental issues using river metaphors. All you know is that your toes are numb and your companion is very, very serious for once. The boat lands. You step onto ash-covered stone and immediately feel the gravity of the place. Every thought you've ever buried tries to rise and stretch its arms. Dionysus doesn't falter. He strides into the court of Hades like he's here for brunch. Hades looks up from his bone and bronze throne. He is not a man who enjoys surprise visitors. Persephone sits beside him, half bored, half curious. A few shades shuffle to the corners. "You again," Hades says. Dionysus bows. "You knew I'd return." "Everyone returns," Persephone murmurs. Dionysus doesn't ask for permission. He makes a case. Semele was killed because of divine interference, he says. She was mortal. She didn't ask for the full thunderbolt package. She asked to see, Hades replies. And she saw. But she didn't understand, Dionysus says. There's a long pause. The underworld doesn't like drama, but it does enjoy irony. And this? This is good irony. Hades stands. "What would you have me do?" "Let her go," Dionysus says. "Give her a place on Olympus." Persephone tilts her head. "A mortal on Olympus." Dionysus smiles. "A mother." That does it. Semele appears, not ghostly, not translucent, but whole. She looks like she's been waiting forever in a room with no clocks. Her eyes find Dionysus instantly, and her expression cracks into something you almost recognize: pride. The ground shivers, and then just like that, Hades waves a hand. "Fine. Take her," but she gets a new name. "We don't let people leave unchanged." Dionysus nods. "She'll be called Thyone." And so, hand in hand, mother and son leave the realm of the dead. You walk beside them, silent. The air warms with every step. Ivy blooms in their wake, even here. Somewhere behind you, the river Styx sighs. Back at the edge of the living world, Semele looks up at Olympus with eyes full of disbelief. "You did all this?" she asks. "Just a little persuasion," Dionysus shrugs. She kisses his forehead, and for a moment he looks like the boy from Mount Nysa again. You don't speak as you return to Olympus. The gods part for them this time. Even Hera looks away. Semele, now Thyone, is given a place in the stars. And Dionysus? He goes to the kitchen. Yes, the divine kitchen. Because he wants to cook. You find him there, barefoot, dicing figs and humming to himself. You ask, was it hard? He looks up. Everything worth doing usually is. You don't say anything. You just sit and let the steam from a simmering pot carry you into a haze of wine, honey, and something like contentment. Later that night, as the others feast in the main hall, you spot a new constellation in the sky. A woman, holding a child, and below it, a trail of stars that shimmer like spilled wine. The morning after the underworld rescue feels different. Lighter, somehow. As if Olympus has taken a long breath and finally exhaled. Even the marble halls seem less stuffy today. You walk with Dionysus through a courtyard lined with laurel trees, watching a satyr chase his own tail and giggle like a toddler. No one stops him. This is Dionysus's domain now. Wild, ridiculous, and strangely welcoming. But something about him feels restless again. You ask, "You saved your mother. You got your throne. Isn't that it?" He smiles. Not a yes smile, but a not quite smile. "I want to throw a proper party," he says. "A divine one, with toasts, with stories, with weird art no one understands." You blink. "You've been throwing parties non-stop since birth." "Not like this," he says. "This one needs a cupbearer." You tilt your head. "A what now?" "A beautiful one," he adds. "And immortal, preferably with good posture." And just like that, you're off on another adventure. You sail, of course, because Dionysus insists parties should always begin with travel. The winds are tame. The sea hums. You land somewhere high and dry. Troy, maybe, or the shadow of what it once was. There, you meet Ganymede. He's a shepherd boy, simple, graceful, and cursed with that effortless kind of beauty that usually leads to either fame or abduction. Dionysus watches him from a distance, sipping wine and muttering something about symmetry. Then, without warning, an eagle swoops from the sky, huge, golden, divine, Zeus's personal Uber service. Ganymede is lifted into the clouds before you can say, "That escalated." The boy vanishes into Olympus, a shocked look frozen on his face, and a half-eaten apple still in his hand. You turn to Dionysus. "You planned that?" He raises an eyebrow. "I made a suggestion." Historians still argue whether Ganymede's ascension to Olympus was an allegory for male beauty, a celestial explanation for the constellation Aquarius, or just Zeus being Zeus. But the fact remains, Ganymede becomes the new cupbearer of the gods. You return to Olympus to find him already installed, gliding through the banquet hall like he's been balancing goblets on silver trays his whole life. Hebe, the former cupbearer, and incidentally the goddess of eternal youth, steps aside graciously, or at least politely. She mutters something about needing a break anyway, and goes off to teach stretching classes on Mount Parnassus. Dionysus is delighted. He throws the party he dreamed of. Golden goblets overflow. Ambrosia is served in edible bowls. A satyr recites a poem that turns halfway through into a fart joke. Artemis rolls her eyes. Ares arm wrestles a tree. Apollo sings 3 verses of an original ballad and is asked politely to stop. The gods laugh. Even Hera smirks once. You don't catch it, but you sense it. As the party stretches into the stars, Dionysus clinks his goblet with yours. "To beauty," he says. "To chaos. To cupbearers who don't spill." Ganymede lifts his glass with a shy smile, already glowing with immortality. Later, when the gods retreat to their chambers and the music softens into something like lullaby jazz, you sit beside Dionysus on a balcony that overlooks clouds. He's still restless. You can feel it in the way his fingers tap the rim of his cup. "Happy?" you ask. He shrugs. Happy is temporary, fulfilled, working on it. The wine god, it turns out, is never quite done. He tosses his empty cup into the night. It spins, glints, and becomes a star. "Besides," he says, "there are other stories I still want to twist." You glance at the sky, where new constellations are forming like notes on a divine music sheet. You lean back, breathing in the scent of warm stone, grapes, and candle smoke. Somewhere nearby, Ganymede laughs, and you catch Dionysus watching him, not jealously, but like a proud director whose actor nailed the final scene. And just when you think the night is over, the floor beneath your feet begins to shimmer. Dionysus grins. "Let's go see how mortals are doing." You sigh, pick up your sandals, and follow. Because when the god of wine throws after parties, sleep is optional. You find yourself once again walking in sandals you're sure weren't there a moment ago, down a hill that wasn't in Olympus yesterday. The marble has vanished beneath your feet, replaced by dust, pebbles, and crushed time. Dionysus strolls beside you with the contented air of someone who just left a 5-star dinner and is now in the mood for street food. "Where are we?" you ask. He tilts his head. "A little place where I used to lose arguments and win followers. Athens." The city is a sun-bleached puzzle of geometry and gossip. Olive trees lean over crumbling walls, cats loiter like philosophers who forgot their original points. The air smells of fish, sweat, and honeyed wine, strong wine, the kind Dionysus likes. You walk through the agora and notice something. No one recognizes him. At least, not at first. He's in disguise again, this time a humble-looking traveller in a dusty robe, carrying a jug and a bunch of grapes tucked under one arm. but there's something magnetic about him. Children wave. A woman sells him figs without charging. A philosopher on a stool mid-lecture pauses, forgets what he's saying, and applauds. You pass a street poet whose audience consists of 2 half-asleep dogs and a bored turtle. Dionysus listens for a moment, then drops a gold coin in his bowl. The man immediately bursts into tears and writes 5 verses about joy. "Mortals are weird," Dionysus says cheerfully. You keep walking until the street opens into a quiet courtyard where a small shrine stands. It's a bit worn, ivy's eaten half the name, and a pigeon is roosting in the offering bowl, but you can still make out the remnants of a familiar figure carved into the stone. "You were worshipped here?" you ask. "Am, present tense," he corrects. Then he looks at the pigeon and adds, "though not by everyone." As the sun drops toward the hills, people begin to gather. First 1, then 3, then a dozen, mostly women, a few wide-eyed boys, one man who looks like he got lost on the way to the butcher. No one says it out loud, but you can feel it, the shift in energy, the clink of hidden flasks, the breath held just before music, the sense that, under the right stars, this could all spiral gloriously out of control. And then it begins. Someone strikes a drum, a reed pipe plays, a woman pulls ivy from her cloak, and Dionysus, he just smiles and steps into the circle. The celebration is unlike anything you've seen. It's not wild, not yet. It's restrained joy, laughter with a lid on it. The wine is passed, the songs are sung. The people sway like stalks of grain in wind that hasn't yet arrived. And you, sitting beneath a fig tree, feel the way the world trembles around Dionysus. Not violently, not cruelly, but insistently. Like a hand tapping your shoulder, until you look in a direction you didn't know existed. Historians still argue whether these rites, the Dionysian mysteries, were religious ceremonies, theatrical traditions, or just socially sanctioned group therapy. What's clear is this: people came out of them changed. They shed identities, danced until dawn, saw visions, spoke in tongues. Some claim to meet the god himself. You watch now, thinking, they weren't wrong. The night deepens. The music speeds up. The wine flows like stories that can't stop once begun. And someone joins the circle. A man in a long embroidered robe, hair braided with gold thread, face painted with symbols no one taught you. His movements are fluid, between masculine and feminine, between human and divine. You lean toward Dionysus. "Who's that?" "That's me," he says simply. You blink. The robe, the makeup, the dance, that crosses boundaries without hesitation. "You do drag now?" you ask, half joking. He grins. "I always did." You laugh, then pause, because you realize he's right. Dionysus has never been just one thing. Not one form, one gender, one role. He's god and boy, man and mother's son, mourner and party starter. He's every contradiction wrapped in a grapevine. And the crowd, they love it. You watch as others begin to mimic him. Some throw off sandals, others shed titles, expectations, old names. It's not rebellion, it's release. No one is judging, no one is even looking, just spinning, laughing, living outside the usual boxes. You see a merchant's wife kiss the forehead of a fisherman. A former soldier quietly weep beside a fig tree. 2 teenagers whisper secrets and erupt into hysterical giggles. And Dionysus? He dances. Not at the center, not demanding attention, just there, present, leading the rhythm without directing it. As the night grows thick and the stars multiply above like spilled sugar, you realize this is why he exists. Not just for wine, not even for joy, but for the space where rules pause, where masks drop, where people become whoever they are under all the pretending. The music slows. People sleep where they fall, on blankets, on each other, under the altar. A satyr snores softly into a tambourine. You and Dionysus sit again beneath the fig tree. He picks one, bites into it, and offers you the other half. "Taste," he says. You do. It's ripe, warm, real. And for a long time, neither of you says a word. Morning seeps into the city like a polite guest, soft, golden, smelling faintly of bread and last night's spilled wine. The courtyard is still dotted with snoozing revelers. Someone is curled up in an amphora. A goat has wandered into the scene, chewing on a crown of ivy it definitely didn't earn. You stretch your arms, feeling your bones creak like old floorboards. Dionysus is already up, of course, perched on the ledge of a fountain, feeding grapes to a squirrel that may or may not be divine. He looks refreshed, which is deeply unfair. You ever get tired? You ask. He tosses a grape, watches the squirrel catch it mid-air. Not of this. You smile, though part of you is wondering when the next moment of chaos is going to hit. Because with Dionysus, you've learned there's always another ripple behind the stillness. Today's ripple shows up in the form of a statue, or rather a rumour of a statue. You're walking through a quiet grove just outside Athens when you hear two old men gossiping beneath a fig tree. They're talking about a sculpture of Dionysus carved so lifelike, so eerily perfect, that it was banned. Too realistic, one says, squinting into the sunlight. Too expressive, the other adds, as if that's a crime. Naturally, Dionysus is intrigued. He leads you down a forgotten path to a ruined temple. Ivy clings to the columns like it's been whispering secrets to the stone for centuries. Birds nest where worshippers once stood. But inside, amid cracked marble and faded mosaics, stands the statue. And it's haunting. Not because it's monstrous, not because it's heroic, but because it feels alive. His eyes seem to follow you. His lips curl like they're about to tell a joke. His hands, one open, one curled, offer both invitation and warning. You whisper, "That's you." He nods slowly. "That's how someone saw me, once." You reach out to touch it, but your hand stops just shy of the stone. It feels wrong to disturb it, sacred somehow, a little dangerous. "Why was it banned?" you ask. Dionysus shrugs. People like their gods either terrifying or tame, not real. Historians still debate the origin of this statue. Some say it was made by Praxiteles himself, smuggled away when the city changed regimes. Others claim it's not ancient at all, but a later invention designed to challenge ideas of divinity. You don't know. All you know is the way it makes your skin prickle. As you leave, you glance back and swear the statue winks. You do not check twice. You journey east through tiny villages where Dionysus is still honoured, not with grand temples but with cups left on doorsteps and ivy twined around bedposts. You see murals where he's dancing with animals, laughing with mortals, weeping under the stars. Sometimes he's young, and then, in a town built on goat cheese and stubborn superstition, you find something else. Another statue. Only this one has been buried. A local farmer found it while digging a well. It was quickly covered again. People said it felt wrong. Not cursed exactly, just too much. Dionysus uncovers it with bare hands. This sculpture is different. It's rougher, cruder, but there's passion in it, anger, love. Something carved in haste or maybe in ecstasy. The eyes are hollow but wide. The mouth slightly open. It's raw, intimate. "Looks like someone was in love with you," you say. He doesn't answer, just brushes moss from the face. You sit beside him on a fallen pillar. "Is it strange?" you ask. "Being worshipped, misunderstood, reshaped by everyone who touches your name?" He exhales long and slow. "It's strange being a mirror. That's what I am. I reflect people, their joy, their fear, their chaos." You think of all the faces you've seen him wear. The boy on Mount Nyssa, the pirate prisoner, the wine-soaked god, the grieving son, the crowned immortal, the painted dancer, the statue, and the one sitting beside you now, barefoot in goat country, brushing lichen from a stranger's idea of him. He finally speaks. "Everyone thinks they know me. but they only know the part of me they need. And what's the real you ask? He smiles. That's between me and my cup. You laugh. It echoes across the stones, bouncing like a tipsy bird. That night, you and Dionysus sit by a fire surrounded by ruined temples and wild herbs. The stars blink like sleepy eyes. The statue sits upright in the shadows behind you, silent, waiting, eternal. The wind shifts. Somewhere nearby, someone strikes a drum. You both glance toward the sound. Dionysus raises his eyebrows. You hear that? You nod. Then we'd better go, he says. And just like that, you're walking again. You follow him toward the sound, low, rhythmic, insistent. The beat of a drum thudding like a heartbeat in the dark. The stars overhead blur, rearrange, and when they settle again, you're no longer in Greece. You're not sure where you are. The trees are different here. Thicker, closer, the air smells of cinnamon and damp earth. Somewhere nearby, a river laughs over stones. You catch glimpses of firelight through the branches and feel your own feet moving before your brain agrees to go. Where are we now? You whisper. Asia Minor, maybe, Dionysus says, his voice distant. Or the edge of memory. Hard to say. You don't ask for clarification. It wouldn't help. The thudding gets louder. The ground seems to bounce in time with the rhythm. You step into a wide clearing and there they are, the Maenads. Again, but not like before. Here they move with practiced grace, half dance, half trance. Their hair is woven with ribbons, their hands are stained purple. One plays a tambourine so fast it blurs into a silver wheel. Another spins, eyes closed, vines wrapped around her arms like bracelets grown from her own skin. They don't notice you, but they feel Dionysus. You watch as he steps among them, barefoot and effortless. A garland appears around his neck, unbidden. A wine jug lands in his hand as if summoned by gravity. He lifts it and the dance intensifies. This is worship without temples. This is devotion without hymns. One Maenad shrieks, not in fear, but ecstasy, and 100 birds launch into the night sky. You feel the pulse of the ritual deep in your chest, the urge to throw off everything, to dance until your bones dissolve into dust and song. And yet, there's a stillness at the center. Dionysus doesn't shout, he doesn't command, he just is, the axis of the spiral, the storm's quiet eye. You see the others watching him, half in awe, half in hunger. Not physical hunger, the kind that gnaws when someone shows you a version of life without fear. Historians still argue what these rituals meant. Some say they were just drunken festivals. Others claim they were psychological breaks designed to liberate the soul. And a few believe they were acts of protest, rebellion against rigid order, patriarchy and dull routines. You sit on a stone and watch. A Maenad drapes a bearskin over your shoulders. Another hands you a cup. You drink. It tastes like spice and memory. You are both lighter and heavier. A voice beside you. This is where it started, you know. You turn. It's Dionysus. They danced before the myths, before the names, before me. They called me into being. You blink at him. You mean you weren't always real? He shrugs. They made space. I filled it. It makes a strange kind of sense. A god born from longing, from rhythm, from everything civilization tried to repress and forgot how to love. You watch one of the Maenads pour wine on the earth. It sizzles. The ground drinks. The stars above seem to flicker in approval. Suddenly, there's a shift. A figure enters the clearing, tall, robed, skeptical. He wears the look of a man who writes laws for fun and taxes poetry. A city official, maybe. Or a philosopher. Someone who believes in reason and doesn't like barefoot gods crashing his spreadsheets. He frowns. This is madness. Dionysus approaches him slowly, hands open, smile soft. No, he says. This is release. The man snorts. You corrupt the women. You infect the city. You bring disorder. Dionysus nods. I do. And you think that's a good thing? I think it's a necessary thing. The Maenads have stopped. The drum quiets. The clearing waits. Then, without a word, the man turns and walks away, stiff-backed and trembling. You know he'll tell tales. Maybe write a pamphlet. Maybe ban something. But for now, the night is yours. The dance resumes. Slower this time. More like waves than fire. You and Dionysus sit beneath a tree whose leaves hum lullabies. The maenads sleep in curled pairs, limbs tangled like roots. The fire has gone to embers. The wine jug is empty, or maybe just resting. You ask, do they ever regret it? The ones who wake up and remember. He thinks for a long time. Some do, but most feel lighter. Like someone took a stone out of their chest. You nod. You lie back in the grass, staring up at a sky where constellations slowly rotate into the shape of a vine. The night is quiet now, but deep in your bones, the rhythm lingers. You wake to birdsong, but not the kind that belongs to forests or sleepy groves. These birds are loud, urban, mildly annoyed. You sit up and realize you're in a city again, though not one you recognize. The buildings are whitewashed, rising like layered cakes into the blue sky. Laughter echoes through narrow alleys. You smell salt, clay, olives, and, because of course, wine. Dionysus is standing at a fruit stall, negotiating the price of a pomegranate with a woman who clearly suspects he's about to charm her into giving it away for free. He wins, naturally. Roads, he tells you as he walks back. I think. You raise an eyebrow. You think? He shrugs. They move the cities around sometimes. He bites into the pomegranate. Juice runs down his chin. He doesn't wipe it off. You wander through the city with him. People nod, smile, bow slightly, not as worshippers, but as those who've heard stories and aren't entirely sure if they're true. A few whisper behind their hands. One child offers him a flower and asks if he really rode a leopard once. Twice, he says. It was bumpy. You stop in front of a small amphitheatre carved into the hillside. Workers are painting scenery and arguing over mask sizes. A young playwright in an ink-stained tunic is pacing like he's lost his script and his sanity. You recognize this scene. It's the festival of Dionysia. This, too, is his legacy. The boy, the playwright, nearly trips over your foot. Sorry, he mutters. Opening night. Dionysus raises an eyebrow. What's it about? The boy blinks. A king who goes mad. Dionysus smiles. How original. You both laugh. The boy does not. You find a spot in the shade and watch as the stage comes alive. Actors don masks with exaggerated expressions. Choruses chant. Tragedy unfolds in slow, lyrical arcs. Gods interfere. Mortals suffer. Catharsis arrives like thunder after drought. You glance at Dionysus. His eyes are glassy, but not sad. This is yours too, you say. He nods. They needed a way to bleed without blades. Historians still argue over how much of Greek theatre was literal worship and how much was just cultural expression. But sitting here, watching an actor scream into the sky as the chorus laments his fate, you understand. It's both. And it's strangely peaceful. Later, you walk past the temple attached to the theatre. It's modest, clean, cool, filled with incense and silence. Inside is a statue of Dionysus, very proper, very robed forward. It looks almost bored. He leans in and whispers to the statue, "Loosen up." You keep walking. As the day burns into golden dusk, Dionysus grows pensive. You're sitting on a stone wall overlooking the sea when he finally speaks. There's one more thing you should see. You follow him down winding alleys, through a market still closing for the night, and out into a field at the edge of the city. It's barren, dry, just dirt and a few stubborn weeds. He stands in the middle of it, barefoot as always. You ask, "What's here?" He looks around like he's searching for something lost. "This is where they burned my temples." You blink. "Why?" "New gods, new rules. They called me dangerous." You walk the field with him, sensing ghosts in the soil, not people, ideas, songs, memories. They tried to erase you, you whisper. He shrugs. You can't burn a vine, it just grows sideways. There's silence between you. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of figs and firewood. Then, slowly, almost playfully, the ground begins to shift. Tiny green shoots poke through the cracked earth. Ivy winds along the stones. A lone grapevine curls up a long-abandoned altar and splits into blossom. You grin. That's cheating. He grins back. That's nature. The stars begin to rise. He lays back in the grass and pats the space beside him. You lie down, staring at the sky, the vineyard of constellations now fully in bloom. Did it ever bother you, you ask? Being worshipped one century, banned the next? He thinks, then says, they don't have to remember me. They just have to remember joy. That's enough. You nod, eyes heavy. Tell me, you say, have you ever lost anything you couldn't regrow? He doesn't answer right away. Then softly, only time. And then nothing more. You drift off, with the smell of grapes in your nose and the sound of vines stretching under the moon. You wake up to rain, but not the kind that ruins things. It's slow, warm, the kind that makes dust smell like history and tree leaves shine like coins. You sit up, soaked but not chilled, as if the sky itself decided to press pause. Dionysus stands under a fig tree, letting the water bead on his skin like he's made of something weatherproof. He stretches his arms, not to shield himself, but to welcome the rain. Perfect day for a resurrection, he says. You blink. I thought we were done with the underworld bit. He smiles. Not mine. And then he tells you the story of Icarius. You walk together through the soggy countryside, the path a ribbon of wet stone. Hills roll out around you, dotted with olive groves and little whitewashed huts with smoke curling from their chimneys. In one of those huts, long, long ago, a man named Icarius once lived. A generous soul, a hospitable host, and as fate would have it, the first mortal ever to be given the gift of wine. Dionysus explains it like this. I offered him a taste, just a taste, and he gave it to his friends, who loved it, who drank too much, who woke up dizzy and confused and assumed, logically, in their foggy brains, that he'd poisoned them. So they killed him, just like that. No trial, no investigation, just panic and a blunt instrument. You walk in silence for a while after that, stepping over muddy roots and puddles. A few frogs croak nearby, unimpressed. Eventually Dionysus stops by an old tree, its bark knotted like it remembers too much. He places a bunch of grapes at its base, and his daughter Erigone, he continues, voice low now. She searched for him, found his body, buried him, then hanged herself from this very tree. You swallow. Did you punish the murderers, you ask? He shakes his head. I made their daughters go mad and hang themselves in the same way, so, yes. You stare at him. He shrugs. It was a different time. Historians still debate whether the myth of Icarius was meant to explain seasonal grape harvests, early hangover symptoms, or just one long warning about trusting your drinking buddies. But standing there, under a weeping sky, the story feels heavier. Dionysus seems far away now. Not sad exactly, just ancient. And then the strangest thing happens. He walks to a nearby field, kneels, places a seed in the dirt. You watch, breath held. Nothing happens at first. But then the soil stirs, a vine uncoils, leaves unfurl, grapes ripen right there, in seconds. You blink. That's cheating, you say again, weakly. He grins. No, that's memory. You sit beside him. The rain stops, a rainbow appears casually like it overslept. He plucks a grape, offers you one. You taste it. It's like a second chance. Icarius is remembered, he says, not as a victim, but as the first host. You lie back in the wet grass, letting the world blur. Above you, the clouds part just enough to let the stars peek through. One cluster looks like a goblet tipped sideways. I made him a constellation, Dionysus says, following your gaze. It seemed fair. You ask, do all your followers end up in the sky? Only the dramatic ones. The breeze smells like warm stone, crushed herbs, and endings. Not bad ones, just the kind that come when the story has already started looping back to the beginning. Will anyone ever write this down, you ask? He shrugs. They already have, just in different names. You close your eyes. Listen to the vines curl around the rocks. The sound is slow, soft, full of secrets, and somewhere far away, a cup tips gently over, spilling just enough to remember. You're in a city, again, but it's not ancient anymore. The buildings are taller now, made of glass and steel. There's a hum beneath your feet. Not music, not drum beats, but electricity and the muffled sound of traffic. Neon lights flicker above cafes. Someone walks by with a cup of coffee the size of a wine jug. A pair of teenagers argue about something called algorithmic reach. Dionysus strolls beside you, completely unfazed. He's traded his leopard skin robe for a thrift store jacket and boots that have seen better decades. The ivy in his hair is tucked under a knit cap. But make no mistake, he hasn't changed. He's just blending in. You pass a liquor store. A street mural of grapevines spirals up the wall next to it. The tag at the bottom says, "Vino Forever." You raise an eyebrow. Still worshipped, you ask? He smirks. Rebranded. He leads you down a back alley where music thumps softly through concrete walls. You descend a set of stairs lit by string lights and step into a bar. But not the raucous kind. It's dim, warm, a little dusty. Shelves of books line one wall. There's a piano in the corner, unmanned but glowing. The bartender nods at Dionysus like an old friend. You sit. He pours you something amber and aromatic. This, Dionysus says, raising his glass, is the modern temple. You sip. It's good, too good. The kind of drink that makes your thoughts unravel just enough to let new ones in. People come and go. A painter in paint-splattered jeans orders a drink and mutters about her latest unfinished canvas. A man in a suit reads poetry into his phone. Two students argue about whether the Iliad would have made a good web series. You look around. None of these people know they're sharing a bar with a god, but somehow they do. They laugh a little louder here, speak more honestly, cry if they need to. You realize they're doing what mortals always did when the chaos inside needed a place to stretch out. They're worshipping. Just differently. Do you miss the old ways? You ask. He taps his glass. Not really. The parties were great. The leopards, less so. You laugh. But this, he continues, gesturing around the bar, this is the same thing. People coming together, letting go, telling the truth with their eyes a little glazed over. You glance at the bar's patrons. One woman is sketching napkin portraits of strangers. A man is explaining dreams to a candle. Someone just whispered, "I think I love you," and didn't expect anything back. It's messy, it's gorgeous, it's Dionysian. Historians still argue whether Dionysus faded with the fall of ancient worship or lived on through theatre, ritual, and eventually wine culture. But here you are, watching him doodle vines on a napkin with a borrowed pen, and you know the truth. He never went anywhere, he just changed outfits. Later, walking down a city street under a halo of street lamps, he points out the little modern altars. No one notices. A forgotten guitar case filled with coins. A mural of swirling dancers on a brick wall. A bottle of red left behind at a gravesite. People think they stopped believing, he says. But belief just went underground. It wears headphones now. You pass a bookstore window and spot a cover with his face. Well, a version of it. Half lion, half young man. Titled, "The God of Madness, Dionysus in the Modern World." The blurb reads, "A Jungian analysis of liberation and intoxication in myth." He groans. Jung again. You grin. He meant well. You sit on a bench. A light rain begins to fall. A bus hisses by. Someone runs past, laughing under an umbrella. "You're everywhere," you say. He nods. Wherever people remember how to lose control without breaking. You watch as he pulls a grape from somewhere, his coat pocket, reality, and pops it into his mouth. "You still have followers," you say. "I always will. I live in the cracks, the skipped beats, the sudden confessions, the laughter during funerals." You exhale, watching your breath curl in the cold. The world rushes past, buzzing with lights and deadlines. and Dionysus just sits beside you, not trying to stop it, just reminding you to dance once in a while. The city fades, not all at once, not dramatically, just piece by piece, like fog rolling in over a memory. The lights blink slower, the street sounds grow muffled. One moment you're watching headlights glide past like silver fish, and the next, you're back on the road. Only now you realize it's the road, the one you've walked all along. It weaves between forests and temples, city ruins and rooftop bars. You see every place you've been trailing behind you in overlapping footsteps. The path isn't straight. Dionysus never moves in a line, but it loops, always loops. You're walking beside him. Still, he hasn't aged a day, then again neither have you, not in the ways that count. Ahead is the horizon, pink sky, blue hills, somewhere between night and dawn. The world hums like a wineglass touched just so. "I think," he says, "this is where you stop." You pause. "Is this where you stop?" He tilts his head. "I don't stop, I linger. Big difference." You step off the road onto a small overlook. Below, a valley stretches out, speckled with villages, vineyards, bonfires, and the kind of laughter you can almost hear even from this high up. The stars above mirror the lights below, like the sky is tipsy and trying to copy the earth. "This is your legacy?" you ask. He chuckles. "No, that's theirs." You look again. The people, the music, the breaking of bread, the pouring of wine, the hand on the shoulder at just the right time. It's not grand, not carved in marble, but it's real. "Will they remember you?" you ask. "They already do," he says, pointing to a group of people dancing barefoot in the dust, one of them wearing ivy, another laughing so hard they fall over. They don't know the name, but they know the feeling. You sit on a smooth rock and watch as the firelight flickers against the grapevines. Dionysus sits beside you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. He's here, in the rustle of leaves, in the pause between the first laugh and the second, in the moment when someone lets themselves feel, without apology. You ask, "What happens now?" He shrugs. "You rest? I keep walking. Maybe one day you'll dance again." You close your eyes. The air is sweet, thick with the scent of soil and ripening fruit. Somewhere nearby, a flute begins to play, a lazy melody that loops like a question without an answer. And just like that, he's gone. Or maybe he never was. You feel a cup in your hand. It's full. You don't drink it. You just breathe. And now, as the story settles like silt at the bottom of a quiet stream, you find yourself leaning back into the soft hush of sleep. The world of Dionysus, the thrum of drums, the scent of wine, the shimmer of ivy, fades gently into stillness. No more dancing tonight, no flickering torches, just the soft, comforting rhythm of your breath, in and out, like the tide retreating, like footsteps growing distant. You're lying beneath a canopy of stars. They don't ask anything of you, they just shine. The night air cools against your skin, and the grass beneath you cradles every part of your body without asking you to move or to explain. There is nothing left to chase, no story left to follow. Just the knowledge that everything wild, beautiful, and chaotic can still lead home. The god of wine, of theatre, of joyful madness, he's not lost. He's in the swirl of dreams now, and maybe, just maybe, he'll visit you again. When the music returns, when laughter bubbles up from somewhere deep, when you dance without thinking, so close your eyes. Let your muscles soften. Let your thoughts dissolve like sugar in warm tea. There is nowhere to be but here. No task to complete, no mask to wear, only breath, stillness, peace. Sleep well, traveller of myths. The party can wait.